so much for joining me today, for taking some time out of your afternoon to talk to us about the blueprint coming up
Mhm.
on Thursday, September 17th. We're getting closer and closer, and I'm so excited. So, tell people a little bit about your involvement with the blueprint, what they can expect to see from you, and a little bit of your background as well.
Sure. So I'm Sunny. I own Essential Yoga Studio, which is a yoga studio locally in Springfield, Missouri. And my role at the Blueprint Summit will be primarily just to provide opportunities to embody and integrate what we're learning throughout the day. So my hope is that we'll take some time to set an intention in the morning for what we want to learn and how we want to take back what we're learning. And then as we navigate the sessions throughout the day, we'll have opportunities to kind of check in with how we're feeling and bring some integration into that before closing out the day at the end with a little bit of breath work and a little bit of like guided visualization for where we'll take that.
Mm.
Um, I missed the second half of that question. Say that again.
Oh, a little bit about your background and what
My
brought you
background.
to the blueprint.
Thank you. Yeah. So I have owned the studio and been teaching for, I've owned the studio for almost 4 years, been teaching yoga for about 5 years. And throughout that process and prior, I was in nonprofit leadership. So I was primarily in operations leadership for several local nonprofits. And I kind of made the big switch last year to running the business full time. So I have this, I think, kind of unique experience of being in nonprofit leadership, seeing what it's like to run someone else's or a communities organization, and now switching hats to running my own business. Essential has actually been in Springfield for about 15 to 20 years, depending on who you talk to, and I'm its third owner. So I've had this unique opportunity to enhance what we're offering already versus starting something from the ground up. So it's just been a wild ride. It's been a really fun experience to change how I use the leadership skills that I started with in nonprofit work to transfer them over to leading in a yoga studio classroom setting and then also leading a business of people in a heart-centered way.
I love all of that. So you talked a little bit about integrating what we learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my favorite things is the mind body connection and how all of that works. So when you talk about that in relation to yoga, I think a lot of people assume that they're going to walk in a business suit and be in downward dog or something in the middle of a
Yeah,
meeting, and that's not what you're talking about here, correct?
correct. Yes. So if any of us get into downward dog at all, I think that will be definitely amazing and not expected. So primarily what we'll do is seated chair-based yoga. When we actually do physical movement practice, we'll do chair-based yoga. And then otherwise, yoga encompasses, as you know, Tiffany, yoga encompasses a broad range of practices and activities. And the actual movement piece of it is such a small piece. We also think about breath work, meditation, mindfulness. I've been using a line with students lately that is mindfulness asks us to put something into the mind for the mind to focus on. It's not mindlessness. It's giving
Mm.
the mind a fixed point that we can wrap it all the way around. And so when I think about using these different tools in this kind of setting, what I think about is this idea that the body keeps the score, which we usually associate with trauma and trauma response. But in a very similar way, the body helps us to hold on to the good things that we're learning in life too. So when we partner what we're learning with our minds, our brains, our intelligence with something in the body and our attention to it in the body, we can hold on to that for longer and integrate it differently than we might if we were just taking notes all day. So hopefully that was a good roundabout way to just share that we'll do a lot of different practices all in one session. And that session might be 15 minutes long, but we'll keep ourselves really engaged with what's right in front of us that we want to focus on so that when we come into the next session or half of the day, we have a good, clear path in front of us for where we want to send our intention and our energy.
Ah, thank you for that.
You're
I do.
welcome.
I appreciate that so much because I think, especially in a day where we're going to have so much information,
Yeah.
it can be hard to assimilate all of that at once.
Mhm, mhm.
And so I love the thought of this for taking in all of those things because there is so much around us. And I'm sure you find ways to work with that regularly. All the good around us that you're talking about that we
Mhm.
get to take in.
Yes, yes. I think that taking time to just stop, and this sounds so simple, and it's like anybody could give you this advice, but taking time to stop and just soak in what you're learning before you add more on top of that can really help for you to hold on to what it is that you've learned in the first place.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's essentially that's what I hope to do, is help to slow down your mind and your body enough that you can say, okay, I'm ready for what comes next.
Yeah, I think so many people are familiar with what we refer to as the fight or flight state of mind, or fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, fawn, whatever they, the term that they may use. And we know that whenever we are in that state of mind, we're not worried about learning necessarily. We're worried about reacting to something. And so we're not able to assimilate. And we are in that state of mind so much throughout the day. The stimulus that we're receiving, that our body may not know that alarm, it sounds like a fire alarm to your body, but it doesn't know that it's a candle and not a five-alarm fire. And so this state of simulation that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate what you're saying about being able to bring all of that back down so that we are able to receive these things.
Yes, I like to think about it as like an on state when our nervous system is all the way on, even for good things. Like the Blueprint Summit is not a traumatic event that our nervous system is trying to protect us through. It is an incredible event where we're all learning from each other, connecting with each other, networking, supporting each other. But we're on. Every part of us, hopefully, every part of us is on and engaging. And that puts us just naturally into a more reactive state. And that reactive state prevents us from being able to hold on to everything in the same way that we might if we were in a responsive state. We were in a state where our heart rate is regulated, our breath work is, or our breath is moving in a way that is rhythmic and maybe slower. We're able to hold on to information and to integrate it in ways that we just simply can't, not because we're lacking something, but just our human bodies aren't meant to do that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's the truth. I remember from last year we had several people who had never experienced anything like that at this type of conference before, a leadership
Mm-hmm.
conference. And they spoke so highly of what that did for them throughout the day. That was a really
Mm-hmm.
exciting thing to have.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of the feedback came from a place of not recognizing that yoga does encompass so many different practices, and it's not just downward dog in a business suit. And also that all bodies in some way can participate in yoga. That's something that I'm really big on, is this idea that yoga should be accessible for everyone. Um, and I think that in a setting like a work conference, a business conference, you have a different opportunity to find that. And it's
Yes.
such an interesting process to shape something around maybe a setting. Like I'm sitting in the studio now, I'm used to being here. People come to the studio ready to move, ready to breathe together. People don't necessarily come to a business conference for that. So being able to shape an offering around what people are asking for or even needing and not asking for is really fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think we are clarifying this for people, but just to state it and put it out there, you do not need to bring yoga pants
No.
to this event. You can
I
show
mean, I
up.
will say my favorite thing to tell students is if you can move and breathe in it, you can do yoga in it. So
Ah,
I've done yoga in everything from overalls to leggings to shorts to a dress with shorts under it. I mean, just as Eden or whoever might tell us, arriving to the Blueprint Summit, wear whatever you want that makes you feel comfortable and confident. Wear whatever you want to our yoga practice together that makes you feel comfortable and confident. So if you want to bring your yoga mat and roll it out and have all your props there, by all means. But if you show up just as you are that morning, that's going to be just fine.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said, accessible for everyone.
Yes.
And confidence is the most comfortable thing that we can
That's
wear.
true.
So you mentioned a quote earlier that you use with your students. Do you have any quotes or mantras in your life that tend to follow you around? Anything of importance that you would want to share with anyone?
Oh my gosh. If you asked my closest friend, she would tell you I have so many, but let me think if any are expressly applicable. Um, hmm. The mindlessness versus mindfulness is just really important in a setting where we think that meditation is one thing, where we think our minds are supposed to be completely clear. Um, but really mindfulness implies that we're filling the mind with something good. And I don't know that I have a quote that can really enhance that outside of saying, um, I think in our society and our culture, we're very all or nothing. And we discount how important it is to take little chunks of time and space and quiet for ourselves. And I talk a lot with students about, while they might be coming for an hour-long class, they can also take time 5 minutes in the morning, and that will change their whole days if they're just taking time for themselves. I want to summarize that in a way that feels really supportive of what we're talking about.
Mm.
I think I would say, let your practice be right where you are, exactly what you need. Don't make it harder than it needs to be just because you see someone else doing that. I think we're really good at that. We're really good at looking at what someone else might be integrating, or what we think that they are integrating into their lives, and thinking that our practice or the way that we show up in our everyday life isn't good enough because it's not in the same quality or level or whatever we're looking at. But letting it be exactly what we need in the moment is so much more special and useful to our minds and bodies than anything that we could see someone else doing and try to mimic.
Yes, I
Yeah.
completely agree.
Yeah. And I was reading something recently that really stood out to me about how we tend to look to other people to find wisdom that we don't yet have or we don't yet know how to use. But that eventually the time comes where we've collected enough wisdom from other people. We've collected enough how-tos and ideas that it's time for us to use our own intuition and our own experience to shape that for what we really need, and stop depending on others to share with us what they do and what works for them, because they don't live in our bodies, our hearts, our minds. That just really stood out to me, as it makes sense that a lot of times in the beginning we're looking to someone else, but there comes a time when we know enough, we can do it, you know? So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I've been using that in my own life here recently too, and I think I have found that a lot of my learning may come now through just my experiences and then how that processes. And not to say that we can't still learn other techniques. You'll probably still learn from other teachers. We learn from other people in our sphere, but they might be techniques or specific exercises, things like that. But that
Mhm.
wisdom that you're talking about and that knowing within yourself,
Yeah.
I love that yoga is a practice in so many ways, and you have to
Mhm.
do the work. You don't get to show up and let somebody else do the work for you. It
Right.
is your practice.
Yes, very true. In yoga, there's a philosophical concept called self-study. In Sanskrit, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like svadhyaya. And svadhyaya essentially means taking time to explore what it is that your lowercase s self needs and desires in the world. So that is the self that you present to the world every day, what that person needs to keep showing up at the best that they can. And then your capital S self is your highest self. And self-study really encompasses both of those selves, what it is that makes us feel most connected to the divine, to one another, to our communities. That's that capital S self-study. And what I find is spiritual leaders, yoga teachers, other folks, they really help us tap into what our lowercase s self might be needing from day to day. And then we get to integrate that, we get to examine that and see how that fits with this highest version of ourselves and how we connect with something greater than ourselves in the end. But you're right, it is so much about the work that we then have to do. And yoga asks us to approach that work from a place of wholeness, not from a place of scarcity or lack, like we're not good enough, but from a place of, if I am made of divine light, how do I stay and live in that light so that I can shine that on others? And I think that that's kind of where that integration piece, or that taking time to really place it for ourselves, comes in, like you were saying.
Yes, all of the
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any, we're talking about, quotes, mantras, and
Yeah.
our own wisdom, and also still absorbing what we do from others. Do you have any books that have been of significance to you that you would share with someone? And it can be in your field of work, or even, fiction, or anything. What's meaningful to you?
Okay. I love any human that can make life feel less alone for others. So I'm a super big fan of anything Brene Brown does,
Hmm.
anything Elizabeth Gilbert does. Those are two of the like personal development folks that I really admire. I'm currently reading Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I just started that. Um, let's see. There's a newer yoga book that I'm reading called The Ocean of Yoga. And The Ocean of Yoga does a really great job of just exploring all facets of yoga so that someone can build a personal practice. around all facets of it and not just around the physical movement. And then, of course, as a yoga teacher, I have to recommend, or I want to recommend things like the Yoga Sutras. That's just like a classic sort of guidebook for living your yoga. And there are so many different translations and so many different commentaries on it that it really makes understanding yoga philosophy really palatable. So that's a good one if someone's wanting to get into like, what is all of this yoga? How do I understand this in a way that makes sense to me? That's not just in Sanskrit. How can I make it feel like something I can take home with me? Yeah.
Yes. And I think this kind of touches on a through line that we've been talking about here is that our perception of it may be through other people's eyes and experiences or what we see in a classroom when we try to compare ourselves to others and oh
Mhm.
my leg isn't doing that or my breath isn't doing that or whatever the thing is that we think we are seeing from someone else, but really internalizing that for what it's meant to be is a completely different world.
Yes, and you asked earlier about quotes that I love, and one just clicked for me that I adopted early on in my nonprofit career because I have struggled a lot with like imposter syndrome and comparison. And there's a quote that I don't even know who to attribute it to, but you've probably heard it. Comparison is the thief of joy. And
Yes.
so those two things can't coincide together. You can't compare yourself to every other person that you see, find yourself falling short, and also live a joyful life. So at the end of the day, you really have to let yourself be right where you are and learn from that position if you don't think it's where you want to be, but find the joy in it too.
Mm,
Yeah, there's so much joy to be had in letting ourselves be where we are while we're learning what takes us to the next place.
yes.
Yeah,
I think I can see in my mind's eye how that is embodied in yoga so much.
yeah.
Well, Sunny, before we close out here, thank you so
Mhm.
much for spending some time with me. Is there anything that you would like to add, an invitation to people if they're on the fence, or just anything that you would like to add personally to invite people to the blueprint?
Yes. Uh, for the yoga pieces of the blueprint session, I'm just going to come back to this idea that yoga should be accessible for everyone. And that if someone is on the fence, if someone's not sure how to show up, just show up. Let yourself be open minded, open hearted. That's usually the hardest part. We like to say the hardest part is getting on your mat, the hardest part is showing up to that session. So show up and let me take it from there. And I promise you're going to find something good. And then for the Blueprint Summit overall, last year, I just remember it being such a space of connection and support and empowerment for so many people. And I just really want to encourage anybody who has the opportunity and the availability to be there, just to take the leap and to be there.
Yes, I agree. It's so much connection. I love it.
Mhm.
And I can't wait to connect with you in person again, to see
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for all you do, not just here in this space with the blueprint, but in the world also with Essential. And thank you for everything that you do, Sunny. You're just
Thank you also. And I can't wait to see you in person.
all right. Well, thank you so much. We will see you in person on Thursday, September 17th at the Blueprint Women in Business Summit if I don't see you before.
Okay. All right. Bye.